Okay, Fauzia, thank you so much for coming to my show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Did you design that thing on the wall?
No, not really. This is actually some folk art work or textile work from India. It is
Mm,
actually a cushion cover that I turned into a painting.
very nice, beautiful work. Thank you so much. So we will begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up. I know you're from Lucknow, but not everybody does that. And so you can go ahead and say where were you born and what was your childhood like?
My name is Fauzia Farooqui. I am originally from India. I was born in Allahabad. It's a city in the most populated state in India, Uttar Pradesh.
Mhm.
But I consider Lucknow my city because while I was still in high school, my family moved to Lucknow. And I feel that Lucknow has really played an important role in shaping me who I am. And I grew up in a traditional joint family.
Mhm.
And I think that also has played an important role in who I am personally.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So you've said who you are. It has shaped you. Can you elaborate on that? Like, who are you? What do you think you are? Are you consider yourself as a as a writer, as a storyteller, as a professor, or a lot more than I know?
So, in terms of my profession, I'm a teacher. I'm a university teacher. I teach at Princeton University. I teach Hindi, Urdu, language and literature, and South Asian studies courses, South Asian literature, Indian culture, and gender studies courses. So, literature, culture, gender related issues, those are the topics that I'm interested in. But I focus on South Asia and primarily on India when I explore these topics. And besides that, I am an Urdu poet. I have published some short stories. I run a cultural organization in India, so I consider myself an Indian cultural activist. My organization promotes all forms of Indian literatures and arts. And I live here in Princeton, New Jersey. So I guess that's what I am, and I am a people person. I have lots of friends. I like poetry, art, music, these things, and I believe that even that interest has something to do with my experience of living in Lucknow, even though I understand that not everyone who lived in Lucknow necessarily has the same taste or interest because I come from a joint family there. I grew up with many other children, my own siblings, my cousins, and they don't necessarily have the same interest, but at least the city provided me an opportunity to explore my innate interest or inherently things that I was interested in. I had an opportunity to explore those topics, those hobbies in the city.
What a beautiful description. Thank you. You have written two books of poetry. One is Beginning Urdu and one is Beginning Hindi. Are
Actually,
they okay?
sorry. So basically, those two books are not poetry books.
Oh,
Those
okay.
books are actually textbooks for high school and university students to learn Hindi and Urdu as foreign languages.
Mhm.
So, though, and but I have published. So those books are obviously for mostly English-speaking university students who are interested in these languages as foreign languages. But I have published 40 or so uh, Urdu poems in different leading Urdu literary journals. I have
Mhm.
published a couple of short stories. So I do my research work, academic work in English, but I do my creative work in Urdu and Hindi. And I have published my PhD thesis that I actually wrote in Urdu in the form of a monograph from India. So I published three books, but the books that you are mentioning, those
Mhm.
are actually textbooks. I
Okay.
am compiling, editing my first poetry collection right now.
Wow, you are very busy person. You are. It almost sound like you are a cultural activist. You know.
Yes, I think I am, but I do it. with this desire to
Mhm.
promote Indian literatures, Indian arts, things that I care about, but my interests in these things are both professional as well
Mhm.
as personal. So I do
Mhm.
it for pleasure too, because
Mhm.
through my activism, I get to do what I want to do, hang out with the kind of people I want to hang out with.
So, you grew up in Lucknow, and Lucknow has shaped you and your interest and what you do professionally in your career as a professor and also as a writer. You've lived in America for, I take it, about 20 years or more than that or less.
Almost, I moved to America in 2005.
Five, so almost 20 years, right? So, whatever time you've spent in India, this is also a big chunk of your life in America, right? So, do you think, has America or New Jersey or Princeton or wherever else you've lived, has this country also shaped you in a certain way?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that um, uh, this country, particularly America, I mean, when I first came to America, to be honest, I was not overwhelmed, I was underwhelmed.
Mm.
And underwhelmed both in terms of sensory stimulation as well as even though I was part of academia, but intellectual stimulation as well, because I had left. When I left Lucknow, I was part of the literary scene there, and you are from Lucknow, so you know that
Yeah.
there's like music, dance, poetry. That's just part of our everyday life. And so, in a way, I left as if I left a party that was in
Mm.
full swing, and I came
Mm.
to America. And my first job was at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Mm.
So I mean, Lucknow is the capital of the most populated state in India. If we were a country, we would have been fifth most populated country in the world.
Correct.
So coming from that kind of place, I remember that when I came to America first, I just felt like as if I'm unable to feel, what was going around me. And I missed more than my family. I missed colors, and that was 2005. So everyone was just wearing like black and blue and metallic colors, and it was very different than roaming around in Aminabad Bazaar or Hazratganj with everyone
Right,
dressed in
right,
very
right, right,
vibrant colors.
right.
So I remember that I missed colors,
Mm.
and so it was very underwhelming experience, and I did feel lonely, but suddenly
Mhm.
I found my way, I found my kind of people. It took some time,
Mhm.
but I guess the um, not having that many people around me also offered me a chance to experience solitude in a very different way and
Mhm.
find my own self.
Wow.
So because when I was a performing child because I was the first child in a household full of children,
Mhm.
and so there was lots of expectation in terms of how well I should do academically and how I should perform in the drawing room and how I should behave like a good girl of an Indian middle class family. So not having all those expectations, that freedom
Mhm.
of being just myself
Mhm.
without having any pressure
Yeah.
was precious. So I really enjoyed that, and I met um, people from different backgrounds. I ate all sorts of food
Right.
that I did not have access to. So,
Mhm.
first, it was an experience of sensory underwhelm,
Mhm.
intellectual underwhelm. But then once I started exploring new cultures, new spaces, new kind of people,
Mhm.
I that allowed me to grow
Mhm.
my horizon.
Wow.
And America has provided me an opportunity to become a global citizen in some ways. So to me, it's not like America and India. I just feel that after navigating my way in a new country, now I can live anywhere in the
Mhm.
world without, you know, having any sense of hesitation.
Wonderful, beautiful. I want to talk about two things that you mentioned. First was underwhelmed by the colors which you didn't find, because Ann Arbor is particularly a gray city and it's
I
always gray. You
know.
can hardly see sun. So that was also a kind of a grim place to come to, especially from a place like Hazratganj and Aminabad. And after that, you you started to find some kind of a freedom in what you wanted to do, and without people telling you this is how you should behave, be a good girl, or do this and do not do this. And you thought, I'm feeling a kind of a little bit liberated in a lot of way.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah,
And then the Fauzia who was shaped by Lucknow started to become a different kind of Fauzia. I mean, Fauzia plus with the liberation. So Fauzia became a different person. And also, you touched upon a very deep subject, which is finding yourself, right?
yeah.
Like learning about your own self. And can you talk a little bit more about that? What did you learn about yourself? You already knew that you are a cultural person. You like to write. You like to sing, perform. What else did you learn about in America about yourself?
Yeah, and again, as I said, that even though I'm from India, you are from India, but India is a very diverse place, and you are shaped by your own circumstances, your own, the space that you know, you find yourself in, people that you interact with. And so, as a disclaimer, I would say that anything that I say is not about, it's just my own experience with these places. So I lived in Michigan, and then I moved around actually quite a bit. And then I lived in California for 2.5 years. I lived in Maryland. I lived in Virginia, and then for last 12 years I have been living in Princeton. And living in Princeton also means that having to experience places, cities like Philadelphia and New York.
Hmm.
And so I think that interacting with different races,
Mm.
interacting with different people from all over the world, that opportunity um, allowed me to think about cultures, histories, narratives about people in a very different way. So I feel that I was always liberal, I was always open minded,
Hmm.
but I have become more sensitive when I am interacting with any kind of reality, interacting with any kind of people,
Hmm.
and don't come to a conclusion as quickly as probably I did when I was in Lucknow. But we also have to take this into consideration that when I came here, I was still in my 20s. So it is about, having moved to America or being in a new place, but it is also about having in a different phase of life.
Right, right. Also, yeah, thank you. You said you meeting people from different cultures, right? And
Absolutely.
which Lucknow. I mean, I grew up in Lucknow, born and raised in Lucknow, and I had to come to America to meet a guy from Andhra Pradesh for the first time in America. So I had to
True.
travel 10,000 miles to meet a guy who only lived 300 miles. And also, my first friend from Lahore, Pakistan. I don't think I could have ever met him
Mm,
living in Lucknow. So I
mm,
had to come to America and meet him and became friends, and we learned so many things about Pakistan, Lahore, and different culture. So same for you. I mean, do you think that you met different kinds of people from not only from Pakistan or
yeah.
Middle East, from other like maybe Africa, and you learned something about certain things which you had wrong ideas before, but then and then when you met them, and then realized like what there's more. I find more similarity than differences.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't say that having wrong ideas about peoples and cultures. It
Right.
it was for me. It was more um, like having no ideas about certain
Right, right.
people
Beautifully. Thank you.
and cultures. And but I must say that even during my early childhood, so I mentioned Lucknow and what role it played in terms of the profession I chose, the topics that I became interested in. But as a person, I think that you already start becoming someone when even when you are in elementary school. So I growing up where I grew up in Allahabad actually also had played a role, and I must say that I grew up even as a child with immense like intellectual stimulation, because I come from a middle class family, but my grandfather was very much interested in books, and he found a way to have a library with like a couple thousand books. And so I was vicariously um, already familiar with that there is this world out there. My dadi, my grandma used to read historical novels with Central Asian characters. And I my favorite folk tale book that actually was in Hindi, Deepak, was Rusi Lok Kathaएं,
Lucy, look at
Russian
that.
folk tales.
Wow.
So I was exposed to the idea of this big world out there since my childhood, but experiencing this was something else. So I'll give you an example that I mentioned that all these Urdu novels sometimes they had this kind of fascinating idea of Central Asia, and my grandma had and all the heroines or female characters had very interesting, romantic, fascinating Persian names like Gul Chehra and Noor something something. And then when I was living in DC, I became friends with a Kyrgyzstani woman, and through her, her name was Anur Ismailov. So Anur introduced me to a whole bunch of other women my age. And when I interacted with them, it was interesting that I felt like, they are like my lost cousins. Because in America, you and I know that India is very diverse. People from different places look different,
Right.
different looks, but people, Americans, based on the kinds of Indians they were interacting with, mostly IT professionals coming from Andhra Pradesh, kind of thinking that that's how a Indian woman looks like, right? Beautiful
Right.
big eyes and certain kind of nose, and I did not have those features. So it
Right.
was very interesting that people would ask me, like when I tell them that, oh, I'm from India, and say, India, really? I would never think that you're from India. And so when I met these women, so, and I come from I mean, I'm not religious at all, I'm agnostic, but I come from an Indian Muslim family. So we do have some sort of genetic connection with Central Asia.
Right.
And it was interesting to see that these women looked a little bit like me.
Mm-hmm.
And also their names, I told them that, do you know that your names are like really names in my head, like names of princesses and very romantic, like from some mythological characters. And they just laughed because they were not familiar with that, because Central Asia was occupied by Russia. So some many communities in Central Asia had lost touch with their own let's say literatures, and but some of those stories were translated into Urdu, and I were familiar with those stories. So how interesting, you know, this is, and that just showed me how connected we are
Right.
through history as well. The entire
Right.
world.
Did they? This is very interesting because the people who thought, you have to look a certain way to be an Indian, like, maybe a little slightly darker skin, or not nose should be this way, or an eyes should be that way. But you broke that stereotype, right? And it's like, I am very much Indian. I'm from the north, but and
Exactly.
you can know that there's not one particular type of person that exists. There are many kinds of Indians.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
actually prompted this conversation many times, or every time somebody said that, oh, which, and even Indians, they also learn, just like you are saying that we learned about, Indian culture of other regions from India by coming to America. So that reminds me that, let me brag that I
No.
actually cook the dosa
Oh, wow.
from scratch.
Wow.
Yes, I have my own grinder. I just make my own batter, and I make dosa from scratch because I'm living in a neighborhood with lots of South Indian friends and neighbors, and I learned um, I learned how to cook some South Indian dishes from them, and yeah, and so in a way, I agree with you that I learned about many different regional cultures of India by coming to America, and also I learned that you don't have to connect. So I am from Lucknow, but I'm not on a lookout in terms of finding people from Lucknow because most of my friends, very close friends, are from different parts of the world. I have my one of my best friends is a Chinese from China. I must say that when I first came here, I was not necessarily drawn to Indian people because there is no like one way of being Indian, but or like had this desire to go and find Indian people and stick with my own community. But I did feel that most of my friends or closest people were immigrants. So when I first came here, I was hanging out with Central Asians, Africans from Africa, some Chinese friends. So that is something to think about. I guess I was able to relate more to them than Indian American community.
Because you were all in the same boat, same
Yeah,
boat. Like we might be from different countries, but we are in a similar situation in a foreign land, right?
yeah.
So that's how you connected.
And also people who make this decision and travel abroad, and especially they have certain kind of personality, I would say, and especially when I am hanging out with people who are not from my background, so that also means that those are also people who are interacting with me, who are hanging out with me. They are also the kind of people who are okay or interested in hanging out with different people. So I guess that
Absolutely,
was
yeah.
also something.
It's really a melting pot, right?
Yeah.
I have one question. The Fauzia who's lived in America for almost 20 years, will if she goes back to, suppose, I mean, I don't think that would happen now, but if you had to live in India, how how difficult or easy would it be, or would you be able to? Because you have a different perspective now, right? You've changed in a lot of ways, even though you have solidified your cultural roots by teaching and writing poetry, but you also become a different person. I don't know, I have to say somewhat American, also, right?
Yeah.
And a global citizen, as you said. So, would you be able? How do you see yourself? Suppose if you had to go and live in Lucknow, how would you adjust?
Actually, I think that I will be just fine. In fact, I'm actually planning my life now that I have entered or entering in the Vanprasth ashram. So, according to the ancient Indian philosophy, like we have four phases of life. The first one being learner's phase, and then householder's phase, and then forest exploration phase, and then sannyasa. Take time to become more spiritual and detached from the world, be ready for the inevitable phase of life, really old age and death. So I feel that I actually am planning to have a life moving forward within, ideally or hopefully, within a few years, where I am living. I have two bases, one in America, one in India, and everything in between.
Right.
And so I find it like not difficult at all. Maybe because I have stayed in touch. I go to India almost every year, a couple of times, and I say that India is not just my janam bhumi or place of birthplace, but it is also my karm bhumi or place of action, because it is my research interest, my teaching interest. Also, take me to India, for example. I this last semester I taught a course, gender, sexuality, and feminisms in South Asia, and I took my entire class to India,
Wow.
to Delhi. 3 years ago, before COVID, I taught the same course, and I took my entire class to Lucknow. So I'm very much in touch with India. So it is totally possible to do the both, and like being connected with the country that you have chosen, and still stay connected with the country of your birth if you want to. And uh, I mentioned that I felt more liberated, in some sense, when I came to America, because I was able to choose whatever lifestyle I wanted to choose, whatever food I wanted to choose, whatever society I wanted to choose. But in when I look at like what actually I chose, so I actually um, chose many things that belong to my own tradition as well.
Mhm.
Not that, okay, I came here and chose everything that is Indian.
Mhm.
I had now the luxury to pick and choose from my own culture.
Right.
But there are many things Indian I really appreciate. As I mentioned, that
Mhm.
the whole, four goals of life or four phases of life. These
Right.
are
Right.
some insights that I've learned from my own tradition, my own culture, and I think they're useful not just for me, for anyone. And so I talk about it to non-Indian friends as well. So I am actually in strategically planning my life
Okay.
to have a parallel life in India, but it's not just India and America, because I have two kids. They are 14 and 16, and they'll go to college in a couple of years. And then I can be anywhere where I want. And I think my job also offers me this luxury to be anywhere I want to be, once I'm done with the teaching weeks.
Very nice. Well, with that, Fauzia, I would like to end this conversation. Thank you so much for your time, and it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you too, Deepak.